first time I came across it was really a long time ago. It was in 1981, 82, when I was working for the International Labour Organization of the United Nations. And back then, if you think of it, it was the beginning of the shifting of economy to developing countries where corporations were outsourcing, etc. And already at that time, I came across cases that were unbelievable. I mean, for us living in the West, thinking of the situation, well, seeing how the actual living situations was for these workers, the level of exploitation, etc., was really shocking. And I did get a chance to meet a lot of those people because we were running courses to try and equip these people with the tools to organize themselves and do something. But when I did the course, and that was 2011, I think, it was really shocking to discover the extent to which the problem of modern day slavery and the various phases that these takes on, because you go from the most talked about side of it is probably the sexual slavery of children and women who are kidnapped or sold. But then there are loads of other phases to it. For instance, in countries like Pakistan or even in India, there's a huge number of people who live in what's called indentured labor, which is not officially slavery, but in fact it is. And the way it works, it's often that middlemen travel through the poorest villages and lend money to poor families. And they take one of the children as a sort of guarantee again. Well, it's not really ransom. They say, well, okay, you owe us X, and then we keep your child working for us so that he repays your debt with his work. But in fact, they charge huge interests on the sum that are owed. And so, in fact, they take these children, they chain them to I don't know, looms in the textile industry, and they feed them a bowl of rice per day, and they keep them for years and years. And the families have no way to get in touch or know anything. So these children are effectively lost. And it works like that in many other parts of the world. This system of indentured labor, it's a form of slavery, and it's very, very difficult to solve because very often the local authorities, the police in particular, are in it. I mean, they're part of the problem. They cover up these operations, etc. While, for instance, in Africa, you have the case of children who are taken away from villages and turned into soldiers. And that's another form of slavery. I mean, we're talking about really young children, and they're just taken away from the villages and forced into becoming soldiers. And usually they also make them take lots of drugs, and the drug trafficking is part of it. So that there's a connection between drug trafficking and people trafficking. The same applies in Africa for mines. Lots of the mines for precious metals, etc., employ slave labor. I mean, wherever you look around the world, there are some forms of slavery. And for instance, in the Philippines or countries like other countries in Southeast Asia, you have loads of young people who are attracted with fake contracts to work with these subcontractors for big companies like textiles or electronics, etc. And they live in a state of slavery too, because I mean, they have no options to leave. They usually live in compounds which are guarded by armed personnel. So they effectively, officially they are employees, but in fact they are slaves. And there are so many of these situations. And I remember even in England, not long ago, some 15 years ago, that they discovered whole factories, one even in London, in East London, that was run by a Turkish business, where they had women who had come to the UK to work through contacts, personal family contacts, etc., and ended up living in buildings, but effectively they were living in a factory, and they were never allowed to leave the factory. So I remember meeting a lady who had managed to run away, and she had spent 12 years without ever leaving the same building in East London. She was sleeping in the basement and working on the first floor. They were working 16 hours a day, and they were not effectively paid. I mean, they were given food and accommodations, if we can call them like that. So it's really awful, but at the same time, it's very difficult to to discover, because the network that controls the trade in humans is very sophisticated, and the legislation in most countries is quite opaque and insufficient. So it's very often difficult to prove that people were effectively slaves, and it's very difficult to, I mean, whenever they, they manage to capture and persecute someone, it's only the small fish, it's only the local people who were in charge of effectively running the local operation. But behind it, there's a big network of powerful organizations, and there's a continuous crossover between drug smuggling, people smuggling, weapons smuggling. It's big, and it's in the hand of sort of criminal corporations. For instance, we know that in Italy, it's the 'Ndrangheta, which is the mafia from Calabria, which controls all the trade, and they control at the same time drugs, weapons, and people smuggling. And it's known, but it's extremely difficult to prove it. And whenever they manage to arrest someone, it's always someone sort of unimportant. And the network is so extended and sort of branched out in many different countries, that unless there was a systematic and really clear set of laws and cooperation between the police forces, the investigators, etc., it's very difficult to dismantle. Also, the economies of entire countries rely on these kind of criminal activities, and the governments are not capable of facing it, even because very often members of the governments are part of these criminal organizations. So once you put all these elements together, it makes up a picture that is quite scary and disheartening.
I couldn't agree more on how disheartening all of that is, largely because knowing that something is hidden makes it all the harder to A, be aware of it, B, think that one individual has some part to play in it. One can always feel, well, I'm not part of a mafia, so this is not with me.